Welcome back to Unleash the Goats, where we unleash ourselves upon the Star Wars franchise with reckless abandon, and nobody quite knows what we'll say next, least of all us. I'm Nat, she, her. Faye, say hi.
Hi, I'm Angela / Faye, she, her.
Sugar, say hi.
Hi, I'm Sugar, she, her.
We are talking about The Last Jedi today, which dedicated listeners will remember I have not seen.
Super dedicated listeners remember that me and Sugar despise this movie.
Yes.
With all of our souls.
Yes.
We're not really talking about The Last Jedi. We're talking about Luke in The Last Jedi,
Luke
which
specifically.
It's a specific topic.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it is specific to Last Jedi in the sense that it's really the only movie he's in for any length of time. So it's kind of centered around his storyline within that movie, but not mostly because he's not in the other two for more than a couple of seconds. But we aren't going to into other elements of The Last Jedi that are also problematic. We did hit on some of it in the Finn episode. If you want to hear our thoughts about Finn in The Last Jedi, you can go check out that one. Also, happy anniversary, y'all.
Happy anniversary!
Oh my god, that's true. Happy anniversary to us.
This is Unleash the Goats. First anniversary. We made it.
We've been doing this for a whole year. That's wild.
It's wild.
It's fucking crazy.
Yeah. I'm so proud of us.
I know.
So proud.
I'm shocked we made it this far, I will be honest.
That's so sad because you've done
most
so
of the
much work.
Okay, I wrote a lot of stuff, but Faye's been doing so much editing. That is an insane amount of work too.
Yeah. I've done nothing, but the two of you have kicked ass.
You have showed up and inspired us.
I've showed
every
up.
day.
I play with Canva. That's my role.
It's such an important part.
It's so important. I'm terrible at Canva. We could not survive without you.
It's so fun. Anyway, it's all equal here, and we all have a great time. Let's ruin it by talking about The Last Jedi.
Yes.
I'm going to have a great time talking about The Last Jedi because I have so many thoughts and opinions to share with everybody.
You do. Sequel spoilers moving forward.
Oh, yeah.
For obvious reasons. As we just discovered, there are some people who don't know what happens in The Last Jedi. So yeah, if you haven't seen it and you would like to do that first, please go do so, I guess. I can't recommend it.
I can't recommend it. I don't think you should, but if you want to, you feel free.
If you want to better understand what we're talking about, that's the thing to do first. We were going to go through a very, very brief kind of discussion of what Luke's storyline is and some analysis on his storyline in the sequel trilogy. So it begins, for people who have seen The Force Awakens, you know that Luke is mysteriously missing. We don't know where he is. They spend the whole movie looking for him. Rey finds him at the very end. And then you get into The Last Jedi, where he is kind of a bitter old hag all of a sudden. He refuses to train Rey for a while. Eventually, he agrees to teach her 3 lessons. The first lesson appears to be the Force doesn't actually belong to the Jedi, and the light won't die, in quotations, if the Jedi do. The second lesson is that people romanticize the Jedi now that they're gone, but that their real legacy is failure.
And the third lesson was deleted because they didn't think it matched the scene in the movie. So they say in the movie, I'm going to teach you 3 lessons. They never get to the third lesson because they deleted it. The third lesson was her learning how to run across the water and save people from a fire, but actually those people were having a party, so they were fine.
She could have been a Jesus lizard, and they took that from us?
They took away her running on water, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I tried, y'all. I tried real hard when I was watching this to figure out what the fuck the third lesson was. I can't find it.
I'm pretty sure the lesson is somehow supposed to be, in terms of, the party and everything, is that, things are not always what they seem and don't make assumptions or something.
Oh, you think it's within that weird party scene that did get cut. Okay. I thought you were making a joke.
Yeah, that is the lesson. Yeah. No, sorry. Yeah, I'm pretty sure that is supposed to be the lesson that she's supposed to learn.
Interesting. Okay, yeah, I so the bit of research I didn't do when writing this outline was go watch all the deleted scenes. That's my bad.
That's 100% fair.
So potentially, it is a deleted scene. I just put a 404 error in there. The other thing that is kind of happening within Luke's storyline, within The Last Jedi, is this idea of an unreliable narrator, where we never get a particularly clear idea of what happened between Luke and Ben Solo or Kylo Ren. We get an account from both of them, but who you choose to believe is sort of up to you. Both of them are obviously going to view it from their own perspectives, are going to tell Rey the story their own way. and you just kind of have to make your own way from there. There is an element, I guess, to this of like, nobody's got a completely unbiased, idea of how things have gone, so it's probably some sort of amalgamation of both takes on it. But Luke basically says that he wanted to pass on what he knew to Kylo and tried to teach him, but that at some point he noticed that there was a lot of darkness in him, and it was, I guess, too late to fix it, which is a strange thing for Luke to decide. But that he tried to confront Kylo about it, and Kylo tries to kill him. Kylo's take on it is that Luke sensed his power, and that this power, I guess it was neutral or of some sort. It wasn't specifically dark, but that Luke grew scared of Kylo being too powerful and tried to kill him, and Kylo was just trying to defend himself from Luke. When Rey goes back to sort of confront Luke about this, given the new information, Luke sort of amends his story to say that he reacted on instinct to how dark Kylo Ren's heart was, but that this instinct to kill Kylo disappeared within a moment, but it was too late because Kylo saw the lightsaber and sort of reacted by attacking without taking a second to speak to Luke.
Yeah, I mean, okay, like, if we take both of these things as fact, right? Mm-hmm. The fact that, okay, sure. Okay, let's say that Luke is the kind of person who would stand over his nephew with a lit lightsaber. Sure, whatever, I guess. Fine, let's take that as fact. The fact that Kylo immediately attacks him upon waking up kind of confirms Luke's bias that he is evil, because that's an evil fucking thing to do. What if your uncle was there to, like, with a nightlight because he heard you were having a nightmare? What if he was there to take you on a midnight adventure? Like, you don't know. Why are you automatically assuming he's there to attack you? He's standing there holding a lightsaber. He could be there doing anything. He could be there to have a bout with you. He could be there to be like, ha, you gotta be on your instincts all the time. Like, you gotta fight. Like, this could be... He's been training with this guy for like 6 years. He's his Padawan. There's no reason to assume he's there to kill him. And, like, Kylo jumps to immediately the worst possible option. Technically, from Luke's perspective, it is true. But immediately jumps to the worst possible reaction and attacks him and then kills everyone else in the school. Like, they had nothing to do with Luke standing over him with a lightsaber. He kills everyone else in the fucking school. That's evil shit. Luke was right. Luke was absolutely right. He should have stabbed him in his sleep. What was he doing? Hesitating.
Should have, but it would be out of character because Luke, as noted by the whole original trilogy, is someone who believes in the inherent goodness of even the worst of people. This is an entire arc that he went on in the original trilogy that somehow just, like, I don't know, went away and he forgot about it or something. The other thing I will note, though, is that, like, he is invading his nephew's mind while sleeping. Like, he's going... Like, there is nothing normal about this. Like, he goes in to his sleeping nephew's tent in the middle of the night and is like, I'm gonna just, like, check and see if you're dark or not. And decides, you know what, this bitch is, like, too far gone. And for a moment there is like, I just have to kill him. And then reconsiders, I guess, within a moment. But, like, why does Luke have an instinct to kill a dark person? I mean, to be fair, he does react very instinctively towards Vader initially, but pulls himself back.
He's also, like, 19 at the time. He's now, like, 45.
Also, isn't the whole thing with, forgive me for not having finished, I'm not yet at the end of my watch of the originals. Take it back. Too far gone to save, but he saves Vader? And
right.
Kylo, who presumably hasn't murdered a lot of people before
anybody.
This moment?
He theoretically has murdered nobody and actually done nothing yet.
Yeah, and he's like, that's too far. Interesting.
Yeah. Like, there's not a lot of super good explanation as to why Kylo seems to have darkness in him of some sort. Leia seems to believe that Snoke has been brainwashing him. There seems to be an implication that Snoke has been kind of, like, I guess, in communication with Kylo.
There's, like, a meta thing that Snoke is, like, I don't know if it's meta, but, like, I think it's, like, a external, like, extra thing. That Snoke has been haunting Kylo since he was a child. Or Ben, I guess, at this point. He's been haunting him since he was a child and, like, whispering creepy shit into his brain. And that's why he turns evil, because he's, like, literally been brainwashed since he was a baby. And, like, that's why Leia sends him to Luke in the first place. Is because, like, she doesn't know what to do with this child that's being, like, haunted by a creepy Sith that no one else can sense for some reason. Even though Leia's a Jedi Master. She should have been able to train him herself. Whatever.
I mean, officially she's not, because she quits training, but, like...
No, she completes her training. She is a Jedi Master, and then she quits being a Jedi in public.
This is so strange because I feel like Force Awakens sets up that Leia has this idea that Snoke has been brainwashing Kylo, but that, like, she's wrong. Was kind of my interpretation of it, that, like, she is trying not to blame Kylo, that she is trying to convince herself that he's not in control, but that it's not true. Because she also is the one who comes up with the idea that, like, oh, Han, you're his father, you can reach him, and obviously this doesn't work at all.
And he does great, and only dies a little bit.
That was also my interpretation, too, is that, like, she's wrong. Like, she is lying to herself.
Yeah.
To convince herself that Kylo would never do this. But no, this has been Kylo's choice the whole time. He went and found Snoke himself. He found the Sith helmet and, like, all this shit himself. Like, he wants to be a Sith. Not that he's being manipulated into it, like Anakin was.
Right, so it's like, Last Jedi seems to go a slightly different direction, maybe. That maybe there was something nefarious happening, kind of like burning. It's so confusing. It's weird. I don't love it. I don't think that Luke would ever invade his nephew's mind, or anyone's mind like this, especially a child without consent. This seems very strange. And then the fact that he's got this instinct that he says like, oh, he was too far gone to save, seems odd and just out of character, and it seems to be going against the whole thing that he's doing, that he goes through, this arc that he goes through in the original trilogy.
Yeah, it's dumb. It's dumb. I hate it.
The end. It's dumb and I hate it.
The other thing that happens with this, the way they've painted Luke in The Last Jedi that I think is particularly heinous, is that it sort of sidelines Rey.
Oh, hardcore. It sidelines Rey and makes Kylo Ren the fucking main character of that movie. He's the villain. Why is he the main character?
But also Luke. Like, in more ways than one, Luke is the main character of this movie. Like, more than Kylo, I think, even, because Kylo doesn't really develop anywhere. It's Luke. Because Luke is the one who starts in one place and actually does end up in another. He does develop. Kind of the only character who does in this entire movie. Because Kylo doesn't really develop anywhere. He starts off evil and ends off, I guess, a little more evil, but potentially with a sympathetic backstory. It's weird, it's confusing, but yeah, like, it's all about Luke. Luke's feelings, his bitterness, him, like, learning through Rey, kind of, but, like, by the end of it, Luke has taught her nothing. And he talks to Yoda, and Yoda tells him, well, yeah, Rey already knows everything she needs to know.
So what was the point?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, what was the point?
Okay, cool.
Well, she also stole books from him, so there's that.
Yeah, she does steal the Jedi texts from...
The sacred Jedi texts!
from Luke, and she is seen learning from, or, like, studying them in the next film, in Rise of Skywalker, during her training with Leia. But, like, Yoda does not tell Luke this. I don't know. It's weird. Rey gets sidelined. She goes nowhere as a character, and they explicitly say that she didn't need to go anywhere as a character. So that's frustrating, because there is this setup that, like, Luke is going to be very important to Rey's development as the main character of this trilogy, or what should have been, a co-lead of this trilogy. And instead he just kind of steals the entire storyline from her, and that's very frustrating to me.
There's that one quote from J.J. Abrams where he talks about the reason that he didn't put Luke in the movie and waited till the very end for him to be there is because every time Luke showed up, he felt like he wanted to pivot the direction to, like, only talk about Luke.
Yeah.
And, like, I feel like every director had the same problem, because they're all... Listen, I understand. Luke is my favorite. He's my boy. But, like, you cannot write a movie like that. Like, they all have the same issue where they keep wanting to make the whole story about Luke, and he's not the main character anymore. It is not that hard to just make him an older mentor.
Yeah.
Like, have we learned nothing? None of these people have read Tamora Pierce, is what I'm trying to say.
Tammy is very good at this.
Mm-hmm. She's really good at making your main character be not less relevant, but yeah, less relevant. Like, be not less important to the narrative now, because, like, they're off doing their own shit and they're not important to, like, the main character story as much as the main character is.
Yeah, like, they often can be there to help that character move forward, but it's not their story anymore. She's very good at maintaining that the new character is now, like, it's their story. It is not somebody else's story. It never will be. And the other characters showing up from prior series is like happy bonus and not something else. So,
everyone go read Tamora Pierce's books. They're so good.
They're really good. Specifically, we are talking about the Torch Hall series. This is less relevant to the Emelon Circle of Magic series.
Can confirm.
Speaking of Abrams, he does come back one more time in Rise of Skywalker as a ghost because he dies at the end of at the end of The Last Jedi.
It's the stupidest fucking thing I've ever seen in my entire life. Why did he die? There was no reason. He could have hopped on the ship with Chewie and just showed up in person. There's no reason for him to be dead. He was gonna go back. He had a ride. He has an X-Wing in the water. He has so many options. They're like, no, he's gonna force ghost project himself. And for some reason, that kills him.
Yeah.
He's so far away, even though distance doesn't matter to the Jedi. I don't have an opinion about this.
No, it's fine.
Just watching you lean away from your mic to yell.
You're doing really well, Faye.
Thank you.
Professional.
This is why we gave ourselves 10 minutes and 10 minutes alone to do this analysis. Because we could just sit here and get mad and rant for 2 hours if we wanted to. So Luke comes back as a ghost, and there does seem to be some element of damage control happening in this scene that he has with Rey on Octo, where he does kind of say that he was wrong about the Jedi. He pulls up the X-Wing. He catches the lightsaber this time, even though he's a ghost now.
Can they do that?
Well, they can now.
Okay.
Apparently, Force ghosts can interact with physical objects for some fucking reason.
And
right.
Was there any precedent for that? Or that was just like,
no.
Okay, so why did they kill him when he could have just been a person and not a
Technically,
ghost?
Actually, there is because... actually, Sugar, did I tell you that I watched more Clone Wars today?
You didn't! I'm so happy.
I watched more Clone Wars today. I watched the episodes where Yoda
Yoda's
does his whole
Force
Force journey thing. Yes. And in the beginning of that journey, Qui-Gon picks up Yoda and all his shit and then drops him again. Beautiful. So technically, there is some precedent for interacting.
There is some precedent, but that's using the Force separately. The Force is picking it. He's not catching Yoda in the same way that Luke catches the lightsaber.
I mean, I was kind of picturing him like picking up Yoda like a baby.
It would be very funny.
But yeah.
But Qui-Gon also couldn't do that in the sense that Qui-Gon is not capable of being corporeal yet. But whereas Luke clearly is. And like, this honestly does not bother me all that much. Like, whatever. The Force Ghosts make no sense from the beginning. The Force Ghosts have been contradictory since the original trilogy. So if people want to fuck up and make weird new additions to the Force Ghosts, I do not give a shit anymore. I think it's very funny at this point. But it does feel so intentional that he catches the lightsaber, he pulls up the X-Wing, he's like, I was wrong last time we spoke. You know, it feels like such an intentional, like, we need to do some damage control here. That was not so great. That wasn't Luke. This is the real one. He's a ghost now, but he's better now.
One of my main issues with the whole, like, broken hero thing that they did in The Last Jedi is that every time it feels like the writer is projecting their midlife crisis. Every single time I've ever seen this done, it's because it feels like the writers are just like, my marriage failed, my kids hate me, therefore the hero that I looked up to as a child, they must have the same problems. And like, I'm sorry, they're a better person than you. You can write them to be a better person. It's okay. Like they did this to Aang. It's unrealistic. You're just projecting, and leave the poor man out of it.
Yeah.
Go to therapy.
The one defense I will say about the Last Jedi is that there does seem to be an intentional arc where Luke realizes he's wrong. And that the point, to some degree, is supposed to be that Luke realizes his bitterness about the Jedi, his decision to let them die with him, is wrong. But it's left ambiguous. He spends most of the movie being bitter. You know, he talks about the Jedi's legacy being failure. He explicitly blames a Jedi, which presumably should be Obi-Wan, for creating Darth Vader, which feels radically unfair. You know, so... there's a lot of damage that got done with The Last Jedi to Luke's character and to the Jedi as a whole.
Especially because Luke, of all people, knows that Obi-Wan was not responsible for Anakin's fall. Palpatine was. Like, he knows that intimately more than anybody else in the galaxy, that Palpatine did that shit, and not Obi-Wan. But he's, like, over here blaming Obi-Wan. Like, what do you mean? You know better than anybody that that's not true. Why are you talking like that?
Not to mention that Luke knows it's Anakin's fault. Like, above anybody else, it's Anakin's fault because Anakin made the choice himself, which is why he could make the choice to come back. And, like, Luke is fully aware that this is how this works. And, so that felt very frustrating and unfair to have to sit there and listen to him espouse it. So even though there is this implication that he's wrong and that you're supposed to take everything he says with a grain of salt, I'm not sure it's executed particularly well. But that is the one defense I will give to The Last Jedi. The impact of this on stories Luke has been in moving forward, which for the most part, we're going to be talking about the Mandoverse because that's really all I think he's been in since then.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, he's supposed to have 12 students by the time Kylo murders everyone. And 6 of them actually join Kylo Ren to become the Knights of Ren. So Luke only ever has 5 to 6 good students, but somehow 5 or 6 years after Return of the Jedi, he seems to have none.
Not a single student. He's still building a temple.
He's still building a temple. He has no students. The one that he gets is Grogu, and Grogu leaves, so Grogu doesn't get to get counted in those 6 that got murdered.
Yeah, because Disney's too cowardly to just give him students because they know they're going to die later, and they don't want people to be, like, have their fans, like, riot over it.
Right.
Like, it doesn't make any sense. Like, Disney wants so bad to, like, keep building on the success they've had with, like, this era of time, like, with the Mandoverse, like, post-New Republic. But they can't, because everybody knows where it ends up in the sequels, and everybody hates the sequels. So they're kind of, like, they shot themselves in the foot before they even got the gun out. Like, it's ridiculous. They should just say, this is a different universe now, like they kind of did with, I think it was Andor a little bit, where they're like, Kenobi. It was Kenobi, where they said that this show is kind of like in its own thing, and it won't really impact these other, like, canon things. Like, it's not really going to be in the main timeline, per se. They should just do that with the Mandoverse. It would make their lives so much easier and have people stop complaining so much more. And they wouldn't have to keep giving Luke nothing to do.
Yeah. The other thing that particularly happens is that Luke lets Grogu leave the Jedi. And, like, Luke is in character when he does this. There's a lot of people who felt like this was not so in character for Luke to offer Grogu a choice about whether to stay with the Jedi or to go back to Grogu. And, you know, the implication that he cannot do both. But I would say that the narrative does imply that the more typical parent and child relationship, regardless of whether it's adoptive or biological, is more important than Jedi relationships and necessary for people's mental health, which, to me, feels like it's pointing to what the sequel trilogy kind of claims was Kylo's main issue, which was the separation from his parents. This is something that was kind of implied within The Force Awakens in particular, and does kind of sort of get built upon later. This connection in particular to his mother, Leia saying, like, well, Luke couldn't reach him because he's a Jedi, but Han, you should be able to reach him because you're his father, and that's way more important kind of stuff. Obviously there is a meta reasoning for why Grogu left, but the way it was written out, I have positive and negative feelings on it, and I do feel like the way Luke got written in the sequel trilogy sort of impacted the way that happened. And also the problem, as Faye was mentioning, is that Luke ultimately fails, and everybody knows it. He fails in rebuilding the New Republic, he fails in rebuilding the Jedi, and so there's nowhere to go with him, which means he just kind of gets left out of a lot of things. Like, why is he not in the Ahsoka show? As much as that show's got too much going on as it is, that's some pretty massive bullshit happening in that show. I feel like Luke should be in it. Ahsoka's not asking for any sort of assistance when she's having problems with her stupid little Padawan that shouldn't be a Jedi. She asks no assistance from the only other Jedi Master she kind of knows is around. Like, why isn't he here? Maybe he'll show up in the big Heir to the Empire Thrawn movie that happens later, but he's not in there at all. There isn't even any mention of Luke.
Like, they did, when Sabine is like, please train me, Ahsoka's never like, well, I don't want to train you. But you know who could train you? Luke. He needs students.
Which is extra funny, given that she does do that for Grogu. Like, she doesn't specifically send him to Luke, but she does say, like, well, fine, like, go to the Seeing Stone, see if somebody answers, presumably knowing that there's only one other person who can answer.
I do think that it makes sense for Luke to offer that choice to Grogu, because Grogu specifically is having trouble committing to his Jedi training because of his relationship with Mando. I don't think it's a choice that Luke would bring up to everybody, mostly because he wouldn't need to, you know? Like, people are there to be Jedi, they're there to be a Jedi. But Grogu is clearly struggling. And, like, so he's like, hey, you clearly need some, like, clarity on this. So here are your options. You kind of have to pick one, because, like, this is affecting the decision that you've made. So if you want to commit to it, you got to commit to it, type thing. And I think it makes a lot of sense. My issue is when people try and say that Luke was a hater for his relationship with Mando, because that's not true. He was happy with him to be there. You know who was a hater? Ahsoka was a hater. Ahsoka was a hater about Mando and Grogu. Luke didn't give a shit. He was like, whatever, call your dad if you want. Ahsoka was the one who was like, no, you shouldn't visit him. You shouldn't visit him. Also, you too attached. Ahsoka needs to go to therapy. She's got issues.
Yeah, you know who could give her some therapy? Fucking Luke. Totally different episode. We're not going to get into it. Also, he's not in Mando Season 3, where they're dealing with some pretty big things. That also seems like something he could have been involved in. Nobody's asking for his help with any of these larger Imperial problems. It just seems odd that Luke is being dropped and left out and ignored. And most of that is because he is turned into a failure in the sequel trilogy, so there's nowhere to go with him, knowing that any efforts he puts in are ultimately going to be for nothing.
Yeah, like, because of the sequel trilogy, the only successful thing that Luke accomplishes is killing Palpatine. Well, helping Vader kill Palpatine and turning him back to life. That is the only successful thing he manages to do. Everything else gets taken away from him.
Not to mention Palpatine comes back anyway.
Yeah, that's true. So the only good thing he does is give the galaxy a break for 20 years. That's it.
Yep. Yeah, and, you know, that is just as equally credited to other people who are helping with the New Republic, because his entire Jedi Order gets murdered or goes evil, so... We've spent a lot of time on analysis, so we're going to move ahead now to what would we have done instead? If it had been up to us, what would we have liked to see? We're going to start with Tier 1, which, like in the last one we did in this series about Finn, is going to be things that were promised in the films but that got dropped. So anything that was explicitly set up in either Force Awakens or The Last Jedi that never got any sort of follow-up. We're going to start with the relationship to Rey. What would you have liked to see?
I mean, personally, for his relationship to Rey, I would have really liked it if Rey had been his daughter, because I felt like that was very implied to me personally. That was what I felt like was implied. I know a lot of people have different interpretations, but I feel like Rey being his secret daughter and the reason he went into hiding being because he thought she and his wife were both dead would have made way more fucking sense than the bullshit they came up with. So that, and it makes way more sense for Kylo to be like, what girl? And like be so creepy about Rey if, like, he knows he has a secret cousin out there who maybe survived because he didn't kill her. That would make way more fucking sense.
You know what also would have happened if they were cousins?
We wouldn't have Reylo.
You wouldn't have Reylo.
We kind of would, because it's Star Wars. They still would have kissed.
Oh,
yeah, but they wouldn't actually get together at the end. The kiss is done, like, at the very end. That doesn't happen,
Sugar. That's just a headcanon that people have.
Sure, yeah, you can keep telling yourself that.
Yeah,
but I felt like that would have, like, let their relationship, one, be so much more positive, and two, make Luke's decision to hide make way more sense. Because, I mean, even Mark Hamill said that in his mind, in order to get to the place where he could, like, say those fucking lines, he had to make up a backstory for himself and named him Jake, and that his wife and child, like, died. Like, that's what he had to do to get to the mindset of, like, the character in the film.
Yeah. There's not a lot of good explanation for why Luke is the way he is. But yeah, I'm without introducing something like Rey as his daughter, which is implied but not explicitly promised, which is why they can not go that direction. I would have just wanted it to be positive. They hate each other. These two people fucking hate each other. Like, Luke and Rey never ever connect in any way that is positive. This is a problem that exists in The Last Jedi as a whole. Nobody likes each other. So I feel like having Rey and Luke just, like, never connect positively was such a disappointment and such a letdown for both of their characters.
I also think, like, after the first movie came out and everyone was like, oh, she's such a Mary Sue. You know what would have been helpful? If, like, they had a little training montage where Luke was like, oh, actually, stuff you already know, translates really well for this thing. That's why you're really good at this. Great. Let's move on to things that you actually need to know. Like how to use the fucking Force. And, like, use it for useful things, so not just, like, going by the seat of your pants, because you've just survived by luck at this point.
Yeah. Yeah, I think it would have been interesting to build off of what we do see her do. Not just the fighting, because obviously we know she knows how to fight, but, like, what she does with Kylo, where she, like, picks up on what he's doing really quickly and is able to replicate it in a way that is, like, unprecedented in anything else that we've seen, where she manages to redo what he's done to her. You know, she can do the mind trick, she can, like, doesn't invade his mind, but she does kind of, like, push back on him and does sort of read his mind while he's reaching into her. You know, she centers herself in the Force within The Force Awakens, and so it seemed really ridiculous to get to The Last Jedi, and he goes, reach out to the Force, and she holds out her hand.
Yeah, although that was funny.
It's funny.
It didn't make any sense.
But it doesn't make any sense for her character, who already has been showing a really, like, instinctive sense of how to use the Force, and, you know, without getting training, you know, and she's doing it instinctively, but, like, there's not a lot of finesse to it, obviously, and it would have been nice to see Luke kind of build on that and go, like, oh, shit, yeah, like, clearly you've got something here, you know, that we can build on, and just give you a better idea of what you're doing so that you can do it, you know, with more intent.
Which also would have been fun for, like, us personally, because we don't get to see Luke figuring out most of his, like, Jedi training stuff, right? Like, that all mostly happens off screen. So it would have been cool to have him be like, oh, I can help you with this because I have the same issues. Like, you are really powerful, just like I was way too powerful. And so, like, you're really good at doing, like, the big stuff. But, like, let me teach you the tricks that I learned to, like, do the little things. Because, like, this is what I had to do to figure out this stuff on my own. Because he had to train him for his fucking self. Like, he did everything on his own, basically. Aside from, like, the 2 months he spent with, like, Yoda at the most.
Not to mention the person she's replicating right now is an evil person.
Exactly.
Which could have been so cool to be like, okay, yes, you've learned how to do the Jedi mind trick, but, like, you are bursting into this person's mind. You're not, like, just playing with what they already want and kind of adjusting the way they think. You are, like, shattering it in order to get what you want. You're pushing too hard, you know, whatever, right? Like, that, like, everything she's replicating is from somebody who has no finesse and is dark. And so I think there could have been an interesting there too for him to go, like, okay, you've learned this thing, that's very cool, but let's, like, turn it around a little bit and you know, finesse your skill.
Especially because Rey grows up in such, like, a harsh environment. So her having to learn how to be gentle would have been a much better arc than the no arc that we get. But, like, her learning, like, going from, like, learning I've learned how to do this and I'm good at it, but I need to learn how to do it gently and softly and in tune with the universe rather than just, like, brute forcing it.
Not to mention that Rey already shows that she is someone who is perfectly willing to be soft and gentle, right? That she is soft and gentle with BB-8, right? That she is, like, got this innate sense of empathy, you know, that she's playful and just, like, silly. She's a little childish sometimes, but in, like, a very soft, sweet kind of way.
Right.
You know, she already has that gentleness in her, so, like, you know, her roughness comes, like, kind of only when she feels really threatened. She doesn't, it's not something that is her first reaction. And so I think you could play on that as well, that, like, you already know how to be gentle. This is how to apply that to the Force, that would feel so much better, right? And so much more natural to her than what she's been replicating thus far via Kylo.
And then you could have some really cool sword fights with that too, because, like, for instance, like, going back to The Last Airbender, like, the fights with, like, Aang and the people who are, like, attacking him where he's just, like, bobbing out of the way.
Yeah.
Like, that looks really cool. And, like, Kylo's attack style is so aggressive. And to, like, contrast that with Rey, who's just, like, bobbing and weaving out of the way and, like, getting her strikes in where she can, like, that would look really beautiful on screen. Might be a little sexist because, like, she's the woman, but...
She also is pretty aggressive in the one fight we see her in with the staff. You know, so she doesn't seem to be, like, unwilling to get in some aggressive hits when she feels she has to. But, yeah, I think there's ways you could play on this, that Rey is more inclined towards gentleness and kindness and empathy, but that everything she's been replicating thus far in the Force has been dark side stuff. So that would have been really fun to see. And just getting Luke to teach her anything meaningful, you know, like... He's so bitter. Every lesson he teaches her just has to be thrown away anyway because it's bullshit. And then they say that she didn't need his lessons anyway because she already knew everything she needed to know, which is like, really? So then why is she the main character? Like, why are we following her story if she's already done with her story? Like, that seems kind of ridiculous and pointless.
Well, we're not. We're following Luke.
In this movie we are, but last movie we weren't.
Yeah.
We don't have this listed, but I would like to say that they didn't do a fucking thing with him and Chewie, and I remain mad about it this day. Chewie is like basically a droid in the sequels. It upsets me so much. Like, he busts down the door, Luke says one word to him, and they don't have another scene the rest of the movie. They don't have a hug, they don't have a conversation. Their best friend just died, and they never talk about it. Like, that's not even talking about, like, the shit that they pulled with, like, Leia and Chewie not speaking to each other after their best friend just died. Like, this is even worse. Like, they're in the same place. They should have conversations, and nothing. Nothing. Oh, it makes me so mad.
And they should hug.
They should hug! More hugs.
Wasn't there a deleted scene where the two of them are mourning together or something? I thought there was something, but...
You know what? I have the deleted scenes pulled up right now. Let me look at this. No, no. There's not.
Fair enough.
There's a deleted scene of Rey and Chewie in the Falcon.
I know there is a deleted scene where Luke at least is doing it on his own, where he just kind of, like, sits there and processes that Han just died, but I think he might be alone.
Oh, that's not with Chewie. Yeah, he goes... That's in the film. He goes into the Falcon alone and, like, looks at it and looks sad.
Yeah. Moving on from Rey, there is this relationship to Kylo Ren / Ben Solo. We did discuss this a lot already in our analysis.
We did.
In that, it doesn't make a lot of sense for him to do the things that he did, for him to believe that Kylo could be completely unable to be saved. This obviously is paralleling Obi-Wan and Luke's relationship regarding Vader back in the original trilogy, where Obi-Wan was making, the argument that, like, he's more machine now than man. There really is no point in trying this. Like, it's been done and it's failed. You really just kind of gotta take him out. And, like, but that Luke kept insisting, like, he can be saved, and Luke ends up being right. So there is an element of that happening where it's a clear parallel. But also, like, given that Luke was the last person insisting that this really evil person could be saved, it makes very little sense for him to have changed his mind about Kylo, who is still very young when this is first happening. So it just feels out of character, and I would have liked anything else.
Do you know what would have made way more sense? If they had flipped it. If Luke had been the one insisting, yes, he did all this terrible shit, but he can still be saved. And Rey was the one being like, no, he sucks, I need to kill him. Like, that would have made way more sense. Because if you want Luke to be wrong, let him be wrong about Kylo. Let it be that he ran away because he couldn't save him, but he still wants to. And, like, Rey is the one who's, like, insisting, no, he needs to die. And because she's the main character, she gets to be right. Because he does suck, and he should die.
Yes, which I think would follow nicely on Leia being wrong in the last movie, where Leia is also the one insisting he can be saved. But Han is still going, like, like, he's my son too, but, like... and he tries anyway out of respect to Leia and obviously love for his son, and is wrong.
And a desire to not be in the Star Wars movies anymore.
And yeah, the actress' desire to very much have been killed movies earlier.
And then the poor guy had to come back and Rise of Skywalker. Oh my god.
Yeah. But yeah, like, there would have been a nice through line. I think that would have actually been really interesting that I think, like, if they were going to go the route of Luke insisting, no, he can still be saved, I would have liked a really solid reason then for why he wasn't out there doing that. And why he was hiding on Octo. Which, for me, I would have preferred that to be surviving Jedi students.
Yes! My favorites!
I know, Faye and I have talked a lot about this.
Every time we make it AU, we're like, what would be great? If there were surviving Jedi students.
If they're not dead.
And they're not dead. That's why Luke is hiding, because he's keeping his students.
Right, because, like, they're not ready yet, right? He only has a couple of years to train them. They're not ready to be out on their own. They've got Kylo and Snoke, like, searching for them, literally, and the rest of the Knights of Ren, I guess, literally searching for them to hunt them down. Like, it would have made tons of sense to just be like, no, he's there because someone has to defend them, someone has to protect them, because that's his primary responsibility as a Jedi Master, is to rebuild the Order. Nobody else can or will, because the only other Jedi survivor refuses to identify as a Jedi.
Well, the only one alive.
Yeah, the only surviving Jedi Jedi.
Yeah. Besides, like, Cal and Ezra and them.
Right, and Ezra has only recently been revealed as still alive, and Cal has not confirmed to have survived to the point that Luke is rebuilding anything. Same with, like, Quinlan Vos. You know, there's plenty of characters who are kind of out there, but, like, Ezra only recently came back. And was not actually there at all at the time that Luke would have been rebuilding the Jedi Order.
That's
so,
true.
As far as Luke would be concerned, it's entirely on him.
And it would also be a really fun parallel to Obi-Wan. They love making parallels to Obi-Wan.
They love it.
The reason that he's hiding and he never went out to kill Vader is because he was busy protecting Luke. Obviously, same thing.
Yes, that would be a really nice parallel as well. That, like, I want to go out, but, like, I genuinely can't. And if it's not surviving Jedi students, there could be maybe something that he's hiding on Ahch-To that, you know, would be useful to helping defeat the First Order, or something that they want as a weapon, you know, that, like, he is, like, keeping on the down low, that he's defending from the First Order so they can't use it, kind of thing. Like, there could be something there as well, if you didn't want to have surviving Jedi.
Maybe he's using his powers to, like, shield whatever it is from their detection. So, like, he's using his Force abilities to do that, and that's, like, why he can't leave, because if he leaves, they'll find it immediately.
Right, yeah. I think there could be a lot of really interesting reasons for why he's stuck on Ahch-To that aren't, I have given up on life.
Yeah. I went through a midlife crisis and I didn't buy a Corvette.
Yeah. Personally, I also would like less discussion of how bad it was for Kylo to have to leave his parents and become a Jedi. What a horrific thing to happen. Despite the fact that Luke is quite literally his uncle and would never have kept Han and Leia from being able to see him or anything, so, you know.
Yeah, why on earth would he do that? He has, like, 6 students. I don't think he gives a fuck if Leia comes to visit.
Yeah, it would be kind of ridiculous. So, I would have liked less discussion of that. Speaking of Han and Leia, his relationship with them is kind of shit, too.
What? Sorry, what relationship?
Han and Leia.
What relationship are you referring to? Because it's not there in the movie.
Oh, sorry. I am missing. Sorry, we are having audio issues. So I was like, let me repeat this.
Sorry.
No, I feel it. Yes, I know. Yeah, that's the problem. They don't have one. Would have been nice to have one that was at all there. Like, I still don't get, why did he abandon them but leave a map behind?
Yeah, that makes no sense. See, my theory about this is that R2 was spying on him and made the map without their knowledge, and he just told them that Luke left them a map. But actually, Luke was trying to ditch them completely, and R2 was like, no, the fuck you're not. You're going to leave a path behind. Your sister's worried about you.
And what? R2 missed a piece? Like,
no, he did that on purpose because he's a drama queen.
For the drama.
So it's like the whole thing within the first movie is getting this piece to the rest of the map.
Yeah.
It's just, like, nonsensical that, like, his motivation in Last Jedi is, like, I would like to die here, everything should die here, I am a failure, I never want to speak to anyone ever again.
And he left a map to his house.
There is no explanation for this.
They don't even try to explain it either. Like, they're not even like, oh, the map is actually to where he went. Like, this is the map that he followed, and he just left it behind. Like, nothing. No, they're just like, they're not even going to mention it. We don't even going to bring it up. Nope. Like, he left a map behind. Like, Ray doesn't even question it. He's not even like, how did you find me? Like, no. He doesn't even come up.
It's like, I know I left a map. I know how you found me. Wish you hadn't.
God.
We needed it for the plot.
We had to get him out of there because he kept stealing scenes. We just shoved him off onto an island and left a map, and that's the whole plot.
That's it. That's the only thing we have.
I wish that I feel like there was such a missed opportunity, I say, having only seen the first of the sequels. But, like, you bring back the, like, main characters from the original trilogy, and then you don't do anything with the found family aspect of them. Like, that's a huge missed opportunity. These people should care about each other, and they just, like, don't.
Yeah.
Like, he's just, like, not there with them.
Yeah, Han and Leia do seem to still care about each other, but, like, they're divorced.
They're romantic. Obviously, romantic relationships are more important than anything else.
Way more.
Also, I would argue that I don't believe that they care about each other. But that's my issue with the chemistry between the actors.
That's fine.
They try to make it seem like that, but, like, why is Luke not there? He's just like, remember this, like, huge shit that we went through together? Me either. Bye!
Not to mention that he loved Leia so much that he nearly kills Vader to protect her.
Mm-hmm. Yes! That's such a big... He literally almost falls to the dark side because he wants to protect Leia so much. And he's just like, peace out. I'm sorry your kid died. Like, what do you mean?
Right? Yeah. Like, and I mean, it is his love for Vader that keeps him from killing Vader. You know, but like, that's the whole thing, is that he's got so much love, and a lot of it is actually very selfless and very compassionate. And so it's like, yeah, he just abandons her when he knows there is a big threat out there, and never comes back to help her until, you know, it's basically too late and he has to die to do it.
Yeah. Like, even at his absolute worst, Luke almost... can't really... I'm sure there is an example, but Luke almost never makes the selfish decision. Even, like, when he's at his lowest, like, his baby arc, he doesn't... He's like, yeah, I want to go have adventures, but my aunt and uncle need me on the farm. I am gonna stay. Like, sorry. At no point in his arc does he ever make a choice that was outright selfish. Even when he's leaving Yoda to complete his training, he's going because his friends are in danger, and he's making the selfless choice to abandon the training that he wants to finish to go help his friends.
Yeah, and, like, obviously there are mistakes made in that choice, but, like, you know, yeah, like, he is sort of defined by his love for the people around him. You know, and even with Leia, too, I mean, to be fair, he thinks she's hot at this point in time and doesn't realize she's his sister, but at the very beginning, when they arrive on the Death Star, Obi-Wan's like, sit, stay, go nowhere. I'm gonna go, like, do some recon and come back. And Luke goes like, no, I'm gonna go save the princess, because that's what we're here to do. And he goes out, you know, and he's very invested in this, you know, and he, to be fair, he's not super great at it at this point, but, like,
he's trying.
He's trying.
Yeah. This is another thing that would be completely solved by, I have to stay on this island to keep my other Padawans from not being found.
Right, if there's something very specific that's on this island that he is either defending or trying to keep anyone else from finding, for one reason or another, even if it's, like, a weapon where he's like, well, shit, like, if Snoke finds this, or if Kylo finds this, like, it is fucking over, and I'm the only one with enough power to, like, keep it hidden. And he doesn't want to ask Leia to, like, Leia might be the only other one with enough power, but he's not going to ask Leia to abandon her life for it, kind of thing. Like, I could see that, but they don't do that. He's just a bitter old hag.
Like, what gets me is that, like, when you're taking a character like this and you're making them into, like, the worst version of themselves, you should be exaggerating their poor qualities. And instead, they just give him new ones. That's not really how that works.
Yeah.
They said, you don't have any flaws, let me roll a dice.
Flaws? They just don't do anything with them. Like, making him, like, believe Kylo's goodness so much that he refuses to believe that he's bad, that would be a good example of, like, something that a trait that he has that could be a negative thing. Like, anything's a negative in the extreme, right? So if he believed that so hard to the detriment of his students that they all died, you know, like, that would be one thing. But they just give him a new flaw that didn't exist before, and it doesn't, like, I don't know where the writers went to school, but they should go back.
Yeah, like, and I feel like it's supposed to be Obi-Wan's flaw, right? Because, like, there's all these parallels to Obi-Wan, but even Obi-Wan is not like this. Obi-Wan is actually very hopeful and pretty optimistic and positive about things. You know, like, he is protecting Luke because he believes so much in Luke's ability to be a hero. You know, he's actually relatively positive about Anakin. You know, he's realistic about what Vader has become, but he has plenty of positive things to say about Anakin to Luke. You know, he's not, like, just defeated, you know. So even though he doesn't believe in Vader's goodness anymore, he does believe in other people. He believes in Luke. He believes in the general goodness of the universe, for the most part. He obviously does call Tatooine a hive of scum and villainy, but, you know.
Was he wrong, though?
But, like, is he wrong?
Yeah.
You know? The one other thing with Han and Leia that I have here is more discussion about Leia's training before Rise of Skywalker. Because...
Yes!
Yeah, because, like, they do let us know in Rise of Skywalker that Leia specifically trained with Luke, but they don't actually tell us that prior to Rise of Skywalker. So we see her use the Force in Last Jedi, but it kind of comes out of nowhere in the sense that, like, she was mostly doing instinctive things back in the original trilogy, right? Like sensing Luke when he calls out to her and not much else. And so this very intentional, very big, powerful, showy use of the Force kind of comes out of fucking nowhere. And it would have been nice to have more explicit discussion of her training with Luke, which would have been really relevant to discussing Kylo's training with Luke, one would think.
I feel like there should have been a moment in the first movie when, like, Rey is leaving, where, like, her and Leia talk about, like, I don't think I'm the right master for you. I think, like, you're meant to be with Luke. Like, that's what I feel like that's what the Force is telling me. And that being, like, kind of like, hey, that being, like, kind of the signal to us that, like, hey, she does have training. She is good at this.
Yeah.
She's just going with what the Force is telling her because she's good at this. And, like, there's perfectly good reasons for her to, like, send Rey off to, like, go find Luke rather than training her herself, even though she has perfectly good power. And then, you know, when she does her cool magic Force shit in the second movie, it doesn't come out of nowhere, like you said.
Yeah.
Also, then we can have her train Finn.
Right. Wouldn't that be nice?
I feel like you could have the moment of reach out to the Force and the hand going out. I feel like that could very easily belong to Finn as he and Rey are being trained together.
Oh, that would be so funny.
And then Rey laughs at him.
Leia's also, like, way more the type to smack his hand like that.
Yeah. And just to like play around with him and be like, oh yeah, that's it, you know.
Yeah.
Like, Luke is more the type who would just be like, no, that's okay, try again. Whereas, like, Leia's absolutely the one who'd be like, no.
Yeah.
Damn it.
Let's not be silly about this.
I'm looking to watch Leia use the Force. Okay, and now I see her in space.
Yeah,
that's it. That's the big one that got people, the nerd boys who, like, somehow hadn't picked up that Leia was supposed to be Force sensitive, got them real pissed off at this.
They were so mad about it for no reason.
Personally,
reason. I think that when human beings have, well, not human beings, but, like, when a species of people have lived in spaceships for millions of years, I think they would evolve a little bit of, what's the word, resistance to being in space. Like, I think that makes perfect sense. That she could survive in space for a couple more seconds than we could. I don't know. I feel like it's fine. I don't care.
I don't understand what she's doing here.
She's putting herself back in the ship. She got exploded out of the ship. She's putting herself back in the ship.
Yeah, she's basically just, like, she probably is pulling on the ship because she is reaching out away from herself, so it wouldn't be pushing.
I see. Okay.
So my assumption is that she's kind of pulling on the ship, but because it's bigger than she is.
I said she was putting herself. She's placing herself back in the ship. But yeah, you're right. She's pulling herself back in.
This is
she's kind of
fucking
pulling
crazy.
on the ship, but she's small.
Yeah.
This is so much out of nowhere.
I like it in the sense that it is this really interesting, big, grand, showy thing that she does that we never ever see Luke get to do. And so in that sense, I do kind of appreciate both that and even the Force projection later, as much as I don't love that it kills him. I like that there is this new thing that they are doing with the Force that goes like, yeah, like they've learned what to do, but they've also like acquired these other interesting new skills, and that Luke and Leia have different skills that they are using. Could Luke do this? Maybe. Who knows? But like, he doesn't, you know, he does something else. And I like that Leia gets something to herself that's big and interesting and showy.
Yeah, I want her to have that. Give her more.
Yeah. Which, I mean, they might have. Well, to be fair, she does. It's just Force whammying someone out of darkness, but... Yeah. And it kills her!
Right. I forgot that they say that she did that. Yeah, I mean, it's not super their fault that Leia doesn't get anything to do in the third movie, because Carrie Fisher did tragically pass away. R.I.P. Carrie Fisher. We miss you. And they were going to give her more to do in the third movie to, like, kind of make up for the fact she doesn't really have anything to do in the first two, but...
Yeah, but, like, I wish that they would have started in the first one.
Mm-hmm.
Like, it's a missed opportunity.
Or saved Luke. Like, I feel like Leia should have been the second movie, and then Luke should have been third.
Yeah.
Just because Luke is Luke, I feel like it's weird to give him the middle movie.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Especially because I feel like that kind of follows the original trilogy, too, because, like, I feel like Leia's not the most important, but she's really important in the second one. Like, she's doing a lot in the second one. And, like, Luke is doing the most in the third one. Which kind of leaves Han with the first one, so, you know, because he's the one who comes in and shoots Vader, so.
True. Yeah, he's the one who does the most developing within the first one, because he has to kind of become more of a hero.
So I feel like that would follow really well, and they should hire us to do it.
Yes. Correct.
Do all three, because consistent vision, so important.
Mm-hmm. We can take turns being in charge, but we'll work together.
Yeah.
I can't wait to be in charge. Say, hey, you know who deserves to be in this movie?
Jar Jar Binks.
It's Jar Jar Binks.
I fully support you. Let's do it.
Anyway, sorry. Let's get back on track here.
So tier 2, we kind of have hit on tier 2 a little bit already, so I don't know if you have any other things that you would like to put into tier 2, but Rey as Luke's daughter was put into this here for me because it wasn't explicitly promised. That's why it was in tier 2. But like you mentioned, like the lightsaber responds to her. There's this immediate connection to Anakin's old lightsaber that nobody else seems to have. So there does seem to be like a potential implication that she's got more of a connection to this particular family and its history than anybody else does. So even though Finn also uses that lightsaber as a weapon, he's not connecting to it through the Force in the same way that Rey is, which kind of indicates a different kind of connection there. So I understand that, like, why people were really upset about it. I kind of was assuming that was the obvious direction it was going, and then they didn't.
And I think, too, like, that it really, really seems like that was the direction that they were talked about on set, because Daisy Ridley said in an interview, I felt like it was really obvious who her parents were. Kind of implies that she already knew. And that was the most obvious choice. Yeah, essentially, they changed their minds and they did something else in the second movie. But, like, the implications were all there. The groundwork was all laid for her to be, like, Luke's secret kid. Like, it was all there. We're going to go off track again for a second, because I want everyone to know that there is my favorite AU that I've seen multiple times is Mara Jade is Luke's wife. And they have a beautiful daughter named Rey. And she has Rey with her, or she runs away with Rey. I've seen different versions, but she runs away with Rey. And Luke thinks they're both dead, and she thinks Luke's dead, so she leaves Rey with some people to, like, take care of her while she goes to hunt down Luke's killer, which kind of fits with the whole Jason killing Mara thing in the original Legends. And then Kylo does actually kill her. And so that's why no one knows where Rey is and no one comes back for Rey, because everyone thinks she's dead. It's my favorite AU. Even though it would mean that Mara Jade would be dead in canon, that would make me cry. At least she'd be in the canon, I guess.
Theoretically. Unless they just went with a different wife. But or not wife at all, but...
Why would you go with a different wife when she's right there? And she's hot.
Yeah. I think the thing I was going to say also, too, is that, like, she could be adopted, theoretically, that it wouldn't have to be a biological daughter, even though that seems really obvious, but, like, you could go this direction that, like, she is very connected to Luke because she was, like, also Luke's Padawan or something, that there was this other connection to Luke that is within the Force, but isn't necessarily biological, and but that there's a lot that she's repressing. Maybe there was some sort of intentional erasing of memories, which is why she doesn't remember this at all.
Do you mean, do you mean they could have had she and Luke, like, Luke adopted her as a child, and she does not remember their time together?
Something like that. Yeah, something along those lines, where, like, because she doesn't react to it, right? She goes, Luke Skywalker, he's a myth, right? Like, she doesn't really react to Luke as if she knows he's her father, so you have to come up with an explanation as to why she's definitely old enough to know who her parents are. In that flashback we see of her, on Jakku with her parents flying away, she definitely seems, 6, 7, 8? Like, that's old enough to know what your parents' names are. But she doesn't, and there's no recognition of Han and Leia either as someone who would be personally connected to her. She goes, Han, the smuggler, she has knowledge of them as these very distant figures in her life, which doesn't make a ton of sense with a very personal connection to Luke. So I feel like you'd have to come up with some explanation as to why she doesn't have that, why she doesn't seem to remember any of it, why the others aren't reacting to her. Han and Leia don't react to her as someone that they know already. So you do have to kind of come up with a reason, like, if she is Luke's daughter, adopted or otherwise, like, why do Han and Leia not seem to know her at all? That seems odd.
I mean, the explanation would most likely be, well, to me, sorry, I didn't finish out the thing, is that this all happens when she's, like, 2 or 3. And then she's with the friends/smuggler people until the 6 to 8 point, which is when they're like, Mara's not coming back, sell the kid, we're leaving. And that's why she doesn't remember anything, because she was too young. And the people she does remember were the smuggler people. And that's who she's waiting for to come back. Because, like, or maybe they told her parents would come back for her someday. And that's who she's waiting for. They're like, we're going to leave you here till your parents come get you, type thing.
Yeah. I mean, you can come up with explanations. I'm not saying there isn't one, but, like, you do have to address that.
Yeah, you do have to address that.
That, like, none of them recognize her, and Leia would be able to recognize her, like, through the Force, you know? True. So while Han, like, you could go, like, it's been, like, 10-ish years, like, it's understandable that he's not going to immediately connect this adult woman with, like, a child he might have seen over 10 years ago, but Leia should be able to maybe recognize her through the Force and at least have some sort of, like, you know.
If Leia wanted to be mysterious and she was, like, taking lessons from Chiron or something, she'd be like, you know what? I'm going to let Luke deal with this. I don't want to deal with it. You go to Luke. That's important. You should have your reunion with Luke before I get to have my reunion with you.
Yeah.
So I don't think she would do that, but it would be really funny.
It would be funny.
Like, it would very, 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 very be like, I'm going to send you off to Luke and not at all tell you that he's your father.
This seems like a Luke thing that he gets to deal with. His mess.
I'm dealing with my own kid right now.
Yeah. Also, my husband just died.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I am dealing with my own bullshit. But yeah, like, you would have to explain why Han and Leia aren't reacting to her, why she isn't reacting to them at all, why she doesn't seem to, like, know that she's got a connection to Luke. But like, it's not impossible to give that explanation, but it's just something you would have to do in the future if you chose to go that direction. So I understand why they went not in that direction, but it also seems like it really fucks with the build-up that definitely was there within the first movie.
Okay, let's say theoretically they really hadn't decided who her parents were in the first movie. Seems unlikely, but let's say theoretically, if they had wanted to do the Palpatine thing, Luke could have found her as, like, a baby clone in, like, some facility he was raiding.
No, she's
or,
not
like,
a clone.
No.
Father's a clone.
I know, but, like, if they had wanted to do the Ray Palpatine thing, instead of giving her random parents, Luke could have found her as a little baby clone and been like, I'm gonna raise you and prove this is how it works. And, like, you know, that's where Rey knows her from, or where Kylo knows her from, is that, like, this tiny little baby clone.
So we're going the Bad Batch Omega route here.
Yeah, actually. 100%.
I was gonna say, like...
Except it's a copy of Palpatine
Instead of Jango Fett.
Yeah.
But somehow randomly a girl.
Yeah.
Oh, so.
And then Han and Leia would never have met her because he would have, like, had her at the temple, and, like, she's his adopted daughter, but, like, you know, they're busy. They haven't had a chance to go out there and meet her in a couple of years. So they never met her, so Leia wouldn't recognize her.
Again, like, you could do that, too. Like, there's so many directions you could go.
Which all make way more sense.
I mean, honestly, I don't even hate Rey Nobody, but I don't think it got adequate setup.
Yeah. I think to have Luke out of, like, it makes way more sense for him to have isolated himself if there is a long lost daughter in the mix. Like, there are so many more things that you can do with that. Like, maybe he's mourning the fact that she's, like, died when actually she's still alive and he doesn't know. Like, that makes way more sense than him just being like, I don't know, guys, I'm really bitter. I'm just gonna go throw a tantrum for a couple years.
Or the opposite, that he knows she's alive and he's trying to protect her because he's the only one who knows where she is, so he has removed himself to Octo and, like, cannot come out of hiding in order to protect his own daughter, which does feel a little, like, attachment adjacent for a Jedi and for Luke, but, like, it would be a more reasonable explanation than the bitter hag one that we got.
Yeah.
I was just thinking, too, the map would make more sense with that explanation, too, that, like, he doesn't necessarily want them to come find him, but, like, he'd rather have a map out there that everyone's looking for to find Luke, because that distracts from Rey on Jakku. Mm-hmm. You know, that, like, there's a little bit more of an explanation for him leaving behind a map to come find him if he's kind of there as a distraction from Rey, so he's just over there keeping himself out of the way, but also, like, he's placed little, you know, treasure map things out there because he knows that they're looking for him or for Rey, and he's like, you know, if you're going to come for somebody, come for me.
I mean, if they wanted to do the whole him mourning and, like, disaster of the Jedi, like, he's upset about that, and, like, the grief over Kylo Ren, like, that's why he's there, they could have had him mention the dead students, like, once by name. At all. He could have mentioned that he was still upset that he lost his students, and that's why he didn't want to train anybody. Like, he could have said, like, Rey, the last people I trained all died or went evil, so I don't really want to train you because of that. Just anything.
Because, like, the other thing that just gets promised and dropped entirely is the Knights of Ren at all.
Who are they?
Who the fuck are they?
What are they doing?
Right? Like, okay, so some of them were his students, right? Like, they're all former students of Luke's, which is why they know anything to begin with. Fine. Why are they all turned against Luke? We only get Kylo's, which is the weird, like, Luke is holding his lightsaber over Luke as he's asleep, over Kylo as he's asleep. Why did the others turn? You know,
like apparently they're following Kylo because like they all murder their fellow students the same day that he decides to murder them.
Right, but like why?
Why? Like, are they following him? Because then in Rise of Skywalker, when he like goes good again, they fight him. So like clearly they're not just following his lead. They have their own motivations. But what are they?
And it also can't be brainwashed by Snoke because Snoke fucking dies at the end of the Last Jedi, and they still are like evil. So it's just like, what the fuck are they? What was their relationship to Luke? How does Luke feel about 6 of his students going evil? Like, my man, you cannot blame Obi-Wan at all for creating Darth Vader. You created at least 6 evil, like, fallen students.
Where are their lightsabers? Why do they use regular weapons? Is there an explanation for why they don't use lightsabers?
They don't use lightsabers?
No, they use, like, metal shit, like axes and stuff.
They have other weapons, yeah. They're not all... I mean, they're presumably Force users, but they don't have lightsabers.
Yeah.
Which is hilarious, given the fact that their Starkiller base is on Ilum. And I know that they, like, got all the Kyber out of Ilum, but I'm also like, it's Ilum. Like, maybe there's something left, you know? And I could see that.
Yeah, they can't spare, like, 5 extra crystals for these people to fight. Mm-hmm. Like...
Yeah, or that, like, the Force... That they would react to it. Whatever.
If we can do clones, can't we grow crystals?
I assume it's a very different process.
Like...
I don't know.
No, these are the same, sugar!
But also, like, there's no indication that you could make a synthetic Kyber crystal. Like, you could make a crystal, sure, but...
Yeah, but...
The Kyber is very specifically, like, Force sensitive. It's almost semi-sentient in that it seems to choose the Jedi and not the other way around.
That is a newer thing. That is a high canon Disney thing. In Legends, you could make synthetic Kyber crystals. They're not as good, but they do work. In the Young Jedi Legends, Lo Baka, who I think is Chewie's nephew, he makes his lightsaber out of a focusing lens crystal that he grows it in a lab, or he finds it in a ship, but it's not like a regular Kyber crystal. He makes his lightsaber out of something else. So technically you can in Legends, but in high canon, you're correct.
And it's not just high canon Disney. This was introduced within Clone Wars, which would have been Lucas canon at the time.
It's still newer, because like that shit was all written in like the 90s and stuff, and like Clone Wars didn't come out until like 2008.
It is more recent, but it implies that, like, as far as Lucas was concerned, this was not a thing you could do.
As far as Lucas decided 20 years later, yeah.
Maybe. I mean, like, we know that Filoni was pushing Legends stuff as much as he could, and you know, he got in what he could, but I feel like this was one that Lucas would have pushed back on. Like, anyway, yes. So I feel like you could have done so much more with Luke's relationship, not just to the Knights of Ren, but to the other students also. And just, like, how he found them. Were they all children, or were some of them perhaps adults? Maybe, you know, unclear.
Oh my god. Adult Jedi Padawan. I love it.
Well, because, like, Luke has very few options.
Yeah.
So, like, the chances that he has to bring in, like, Force-sensitive adults, maybe, who are more willing to, like, choose this life would make more sense than that there are parents out there going, like, sure, yeah, totally, take my kid, you know, to do this life that, like, the Empire has been wiping out and, you know, smearing for decades.
I mean, in fairness, there's been, like, a shit ton of, war, and war makes orphans. I don't know if you know this, but like war makes a lot of orphan children.
Right. There could be some orphan children that he picks up as well, but you know, those orphans don't tend to survive super long either. But yes, he could have found some orphan children, but it also would be entirely reasonable for him to have had to take on adult Padawans.
Yeah, totally.
He trains to be a Jedi as an adult, and it makes sense that after years of like trying to repress Force-sensitive people as much as possible, that there are adults, like, able to learn. And so it makes sense when you're, like, starting from scratch with the Jedi, that there are adults out there who didn't have the opportunity to be trained before that want to be trained now.
Yeah.
They should have done that. Sugar, you're so smart.
Thanks.
Also, like, Luke doesn't have really a lot of information about how to run the Jedi Order. He's kind of making it up. as he goes for the most part. I mean, we don't know when he found those texts, so he doesn't really know all the like original rules and stuff that they had in the prequels for like ages and things like that.
No, but to be fair, he seems to have access to Yoda.
You know? I mean, that's true. It's unclear how much access he has exactly, but yeah, that's a good point.
But at least some. He can ask some questions whenever he gets the opportunity to be like, great, you've got 900 years worth of wisdom. Help me out here. Like, I've got a question. Give me a hand, bro. Like, how would you go out and find a Padawan? You know, what is the process between a master choosing? He also has no other masters. He has to train everyone himself. You know, so he never probably has a Padawan that is his. It would be like, they all have to be mine, you know? Like, I have no other options because Ahsoka's fucking off doing who knows what. Or dead, depending on your interpretation of that last scene.
Leia's busy running the government.
And chose not to live a life as a Jedi anyway. So, you know, she can't, like, it would not be right to ask her to help train other students as Jedi in a life that she has chosen not to follow. Like... Yeah, it's like, it's on Luke. And also because Disney Canon chose not to acknowledge Rebels beyond putting Kanan's voice into the ones that Rey hears. But, like, there's no indication of what the fuck happened to Ezra. You know, also, the ghost shows up for half a second in the background of a shot. In Rise of Skywalker, the ghost ship.
Oh! I thought you meant Ezra's ghost, and I was
no. The ghost is the name of the ship.
What are you talking about? Okay, that makes way more sense.
Yeah, no. When they come back with the whole community in Rise of Skywalker, the ghost is one of the ships in the background there.
Oh, that's cute.
So Ezra heard their call in the second movie when they were trapped on the salt planet. He was like, "Nah, I'm busy actually. Fuck off." And then in the third movie, when they got the call again, he was like, "Oh, I'm free today. My Friday night plans are canceled."
If we assume it's Ezra behind the wheel and not, like, Jason, you know.
Yeah.
Could be.
Or Sabine.
All them people that show up in the third movie that did not show up in the second movie always cracks me up. It's so funny.
Not to mention they don't show up at the beginning of the first movie. It's been a year and none of these assholes have showed up.
No one can their call at all. Like, this time the galaxy is going to pull together. I'm like, I don't know why you believe that, because they did not last time.
Nobody has before. Yeah. No, that's fine. But yeah, there is not a lot of, like, acknowledgement of Rebels in any major way. And so, like, where Ezra is and whether he could help at all is completely unacknowledged. So it's like, it's down to Luke. And there's just no, I don't know, there's no exploration of how he felt about that.
And you know what? You know who's in that ship? Chopper. He's by himself in that ship.
He's just doing it all by himself.
Yeah.
That sounds like Chopper, let's be honest.
I mean, you have tier 3 here, and the only thing that I have for tier 3 was Secret Jedi hiding, which we already talked about, because that's all I wanted.
Yeah, I didn't have a ton in, like, random wasn't promised or implied at all kind of things for Luke, because I feel like they did imply or promise a lot of things about Luke that went nowhere.
I mean, I wanted Mara Jade. That's all that I wanted out of this movies. I just wanted Mara Jade. I didn't get it because they hate me, but...
Okay, but having seen the movies and how good of a job they did, are you a little bit glad that they didn't have, like, that they didn't butcher Mara?
Yes.
Okay.
Because now I have hope for the future. But I'm just saying that they could have done it, and they didn't.
Bittersweet.
Would it have been better if they had? Maybe.
I don't know. I don't trust them.
I still don't, no.
Abrams could have potentially been okay with Mara. Abrams at least did the damage control thing for Luke, so, you know, like, I don't... His writing is very hit or miss. There's a lot of problems I do have with the things he chose to do, but, like, I feel like he didn't totally butcher the characters in a way that was, like, irreparable.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's, like, the thing about Rian Johnson is that, like, he really seemed like he didn't like any of the characters he was writing for. I'm like, why are you writing for Star Wars if you don't like these people?
Yeah. Yeah, I was like, you like the aesthetics of it, but you don't seem to care for any other aspect of it. Which, to be fair, I have not... Okay, so in clarity, I have not seen Knives Out or Glass Onion, but it does seem populated primarily by large groups of people who hate each other.
Yes. He usually has, like, 2 people who are nice to each other. Like, the protagonist person and the detective is usually nice to each other. But I also haven't seen them because I hate him.
Yes, I have also been boycotted.
It's been a boycott intentionally. Even though I hear they're great and they're actually really good movies, I refuse to watch them.
I'll watch them and I'll let you know.
Thank you.
Great, thank you, Nat.
But yeah, like, from what I've been able to tell, like, most of the ensemble is populated by characters who do not like each other. And, like, those two characters who like each other hate everyone else.
Yes.
Yeah. Which can be done well.
Sure, like, it works thematically for these movies he's doing now, for Glass Onion and Knives Out. From what I can tell, they seem to... this dynamic does seem to work with what he's doing. It does not work for Star Wars.
No, Star Wars is not about that.
Mm-mm. I mean, you could make a movie that had that energy, but you cannot make that movie as the second in a trilogy with an ensemble cast that's already been established and already has these relationships.
Not to mention, it's two separate ensemble casts because they have the one from the original trilogy as well as the new one from this trilogy, which had been set up in Force Awakens, both of whom are set up as people who like each other.
Yeah, like, you can't do that. They should have done a different movie for him. They should have given him a murder mystery in Star Wars universe. I bet he would have had so much fun in a little casino doing a little murder mystery in Star Wars with his little ensemble. He would have had a great time. I would have loved that.
To be fair, we know exactly what a murder mystery in Star Wars written by someone who likes a lot of Rian Johnson's same themes look like. We just got it. It's just called The Acolyte.
That's not really
we're
a
not
murder
gonna
mystery.
talk about that.
I'm just saying, you know I'm right.
But it's not really a murder mystery the same way that, like...
Yeah, it should have been, probably.
I think they advertised it as something like a murder mystery, but...
Oh, they lied.
They lied, well, it's not.
To be fair, they lied about a lot of things.
It's not that. Anyway. I want, like, when I think murder mystery, I want it to take place... I want it to be like Clue. I want it to take place within 12 hours.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
And I want someone there trying to sell people death sticks. That's all I want.
Okay.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Would we like a goat fact to close us out this beautifully?
We would.
Okay. Goats just like water, and they would rather leap over streams and puddles than step in them. They don't like to get their feet wet.
That's so cute. I love them.
I thought that was really appropriate for Luke because he grew up on a desert.
Okay. I thought that it was like a reference to, like, not wanting to watch the sequel. Like, I would rather leap over it.
You know
that's fair.
I like that better. We're gonna keep that.
And see. Our intro and outro music is Mos Eisley Cantina by Speedkicks. Angela and I edit, our artwork is by me, and Sugar is our writer and researcher. You can find us on Instagram and Tumblr at Unleash the Goats. Thanks for listening.